Joy start.
Good morning, Graham Park. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please join me in saying our school's vision statement. At Graham Park Middle School, all students are learning, achieving, and preparing for their future. Please be seated for a moment of silence. During this time, you should sit silently and reflect upon the day.
I'm Brandon. I'm here with Sarah, Joy, and Renee on GPNN, Grand Park's official news network. Today is March 24th, and it is a blue day.
March is Music in Our Schools Month. Students who are supposed to music-based lessons scored a full 100% higher on fraction tests than those who learned in the confidential manner. Want to improve in math? Your band, chorus, and orchestra classes will help.
We have a roar for today for Mrs. Sowers. Thank you, Mrs. Sowers, for always creating excellent Nearpods for my classes. You roar.
Grab the rain gear out the door. Meteorologists are tracking our next weather maker that will bring rain for most of the day. Showers this morning will give way to steadier rain late morning through the afternoon. A slug of moderate to heavy rains is likely east of I-95 this afternoon. Rainfall's totals may exceed 1 inch for those areas. For these areas, temperatures with the clouds and rains will stay in the 50s. The rain will taper off to a few showers this evening with most cloudy skies tonight. Areas of dense fog are likely overnight and will last through 9 to 10 a.m. Thursday.
If you have not done so already, please submit your individual yearbook photo to Miss Susan Thompson today. Please check your student PWCS email account. Ms. Thompson has sent an individual email to each student she is missing a photo from. Email THOMPSSR@pwcs.edu.
And now for our fun fact of the day. In 1912, Mayor Yukio Ozaki of Tokyo gave Washington, D.C. 3,000 cherry trees as a gift. This was not the first gift from Ozaki. The first attempt to present the trees occurred in 1910. The 2,000 trees were diseased. They had to be burned. Ms. Ramadan, do you have anything to share with us students?
Good morning, Grand Park Lions, and we have a special guest joining us today for our final segment of Women's History Spotlight today. And today we have Maria D. Burgos, who is the Equity and Inclusion Officer for Prince William County Government Office of Executive Management. Maria Burgos, or Miss Burgos, has enjoyed living, teaching, and leading equity and inclusivity development in one of the largest diverse communities in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right here in Prince William County. Through her lens as a Latinx woman and over 20 years of experience in K-12 public education, Ms. Burgos inspires individual participants to examine their social conscience lens to cultivate continual transformations toward equity and justice within the self, within our work practices, and within our communities. In her current role, Ms. Burgos will collaborate with members of the community and Prince William County leadership to facilitate an organizational culture that institutionalizes the use of equity mindedness, equity metrics, and equity strategies to support responsive and inclusive practices. So please help me welcome Ms. Burgos. She is a longtime Prince William County Public Schools employee, just a wealth of knowledge, and she's been here to Grand Park several times to support our initiatives here on cultural responsive learning. So we are so happy to welcome Ms. Burgos. So good morning. Oh, you're muted. You're muted. We can't hear you.
There I go
There you go.
again.
There you go. So, Ms. Burgos, thank you so much for joining us this morning. And we're going to give you an opportunity just to share your experiences with our students and our school community, and just talk a little bit about what it is that you've done previously and what you're currently doing.
Oh, thank you. First, I want to say good morning to everyone and to thank you for the invitation. Both of my children, who are now grown adults, attended Grand Park and had a wonderful experience there. And so Grand Park has always had that connection with me. And Ms. Ramadan and I have been colleagues and friends for a very long time. And when she first came on board to where she is now, wow, the type of culture that she has cultivated and continues to grow with her community, with her staff, with her parents, and for you as students is amazing. And so Grand Park is a great place to be. And I'm so happy to be part of your community this morning. You did send me a set of questions. And I know that time is of the essence too. So I want to make sure that I address these questions appropriately. And I thought that they were fantastic, by the way. Really good. So how did you determine your career path? Well, if you know me, you know that I'm very forward in especially my own life, and I'm very transparent. So how did I determine my career path? Growing up as a child, I came here at age 9. I did not speak one word of English. I had been plucked out of a jungle in Panama. My dad was a military engineer and felt that we needed to live there to have a real good sense of what was important in life. And what was important in life was to be filled with the highest degree of love for self and love for the community. And there was no place that I didn't turn to where people didn't know who I belonged to, and I knew I belonged to that community too. Coming here, the people that I knew, the language that I spoke, the rules that I followed, and the books that I saw, the images that I saw all disappeared. I came here as a 9-year-old girl where images of me were no longer present in school, where my language was no longer present, where the community members who told on me on the daily, Ms. Burgos, Ms. Maria tried to skip the line at school today. None of that. My parents became one culture at home, and my school became a whole nother. So I lived in between two worlds, like many of you do today. You keep your school life to yourself and your home life to yourself. So what I did want throughout that experience was to become an engineer and an architect. I like building and still do to this day. In my senior year of high school, I was pregnant. My senior year, it was 5 of us. We considered that an epidemic at that time. It was 1985. And our counselor met with us on a monthly basis to prepare us to be moms. And she asked us one critical question upon a month away from graduation. She said, "What are all of you going to do?" And everyone spoke about their future. And I told them that I had been accepted in NC State to go into the engineering program. At that time, she smiled at me, and in a very kind way, she said, "Sugar, only 3% of your people graduate from college." And then she slid over some papers to me, and they were government assistant papers. And she told me that that was my reality, to fill those out, to ensure that I would have food for myself and my child. Coming from a home that constantly spoke to me about what it was to be a young girl of color, especially one whose primary language was not English from her parents, I was very confused because she said it to me in a very, very kind way, with kind intentions. But we call those tiny little cuts, they're microaggression. Many times people say things to you without realizing themselves how hurtful they are. And that was what determined my career path. I went home and became furious at the idea that someone, anyone, would believe a message that would frame them so negatively that would give them no space to be who they want to be. And I started thinking about my educational path, and I thought it started thinking no one should ever hear this message. And that's why I became an educator. Being an educator was a blessing. I'm always an educator. I'm always a learner. And I wanted to impart that knowledge in my kids. If you could see it, you could think it, you could be it. But I wanted to also impart to them that loving themselves was the gateway to becoming. I have found that in years of being in education, I was also advocating continuously for equity for those who were not being represented at the table. And that's what led me to the career path to single out educational equity to ensure that our community continues to thrive and continues to have representation by everyone's lived experience at the table.
All right, thank you, Ms. Burgos. That's very, very powerful. And I know that's very motivational for several of our students that are watching this morning. And I thank you for sharing your story with us. Can you tell us, in your current position, in your previous position, how are you able to build those connections in the community? And what advice would you give students or parents, community, whoever's watching right now? What advice would you give them in moving forward and accomplishing their goals, just as you did with yours?
Well, my advice is though it's simple, it's tough when you start looking at it in a granular level. Be good to yourself. Constantly have self-talk in the mirror and tell that person, I love you. And if saying those words to the person in the mirror feels like you just slid your right foot into your left foot, examine that. Sometimes we don't realize that we have built self-loathing behaviors and the society has built it for us. So start with the practice of telling that person in the mirror every day when you're brushing your teeth, I love you, you're great. And also to move forward in this career, I've always lived by a rule of knowing and knowing that not everybody is where I'm at in terms of knowledge base, and knowing that everybody's experience is very different. So the only thing I could truly control is myself. And what I reflect on every single day is this one quote: do my actions and words represent who I am and who I want to become? And when I was a building administrator at a middle school, sometimes I would get students who would come in repeatedly into my office for making bad choices. I would offer them a glass of water or just something to settle them down. And I would say, I want you to think about what just happened. Does it frame who you are and who you want to become? I have found that sitting in that for a while makes me want to push forward. And because that's the only direction that we can go. What are the challenges that I've had and rewards in working in this area? So the challenges are that we live in a quantitative world that values what you can measure in numbers and wants those numbers very quickly. Living and learning in an equitable and inclusive society requires intentional everyday governance of your own thought processes. It requires intentional listening, really listening to your community to gather qualitative data. Now, your community isn't going to come and start talking to you about their personal experiences. That's a very vulnerable place to be. They don't know you much of the time. They don't trust you. They don't know your agenda. So there's a lot of sit and listen that goes on during this stage. And you have to be very patient to build community for people to be truly authentic about who they are and their experiences. When you're able to capture that, you're combining both quantitative and qualitative data. That is a starting point of putting equitable actions, goals, and plans in motion. And that is the greatest challenge because it requires time to do it right. And to do it right in a fast paced society where you can get everything just about at your fingertips. And now you're asking about social and emotional changes that have to occur to change an organization to really create that inclusivity requires that level of time and tenacity. So that is really the greatest challenge. The reward is when you see it developing in front of you. When you see that folks who were not so sure about equity, often angered, even when you say equity, when you see them embracing who they are as their lived experience, when you see someone say, I am a white woman, and be really happy that that is their identity without all the historical baggage, to see a person say, I am an African American man, to have all these conversations of identity in a room, and then to utilize that to empower themselves to build a community and where higher levels of organizations start coming in place because you're actually using the perspectives of everyone's lens, whether it's their sexual orientation, their identity, their race, their ethnicity, uh, a person who may have disabilities who's not asked about how they feel about any particular process within the organization. When you see folks speaking up without feeling that somehow there's going to be a repercussion, that right there is a big reward.
All right, so thank you so much for sharing that. I'm going to ask if Dr. Alexander or Mr. Riddle have any questions, or any of our anchors. If you have a question, we have a couple of more minutes, so I want to give you an opportunity if you'd like to ask Ms. Burgos anything at this time.
I think the one question I'd like to ask is just about overcoming adversity and what advice you have for the students as to when they have a challenge in front of them and sort of the key steps to overcoming that.
Know that life is messy. You're never going to overcome adversity. That's what life is. Adversity allows you to examine and to grow in the next step, in the next direction. You're never going to live a life without adversity. Life is always going to give you ups and downs, and they serve a purpose. They serve a purpose to keep you in your journey and to continue growing. You have to examine those pitfalls because they're put there for a purpose. They're put there to stop, re-examine, think, and move forward. They're not there to keep you there. They're not there to frame who you are. They're there as lessons. So if I had to think about steps, the biggest step is always to affirm to yourself who you are and to affirm to yourself in positive ways, because we're negatively wired intuitively. We're negatively wired to think the least of ourselves, to question ourselves in ways that don't uplift us. So you have to be very intentional about lifting yourself up. And when those roadblocks come, and they will come throughout your entire life, recognize that those are the places to check in and check in where you are in the process and to keep moving.
Thank you, Ms. Burgos. It's hard to even ask a question with all of the inspiration that you've given. But I just want to, if there was a recommendation to all of our students in terms of someone to maybe research or read about, and I know it's a lot of people out there from the perspective of your work, who would you recommend?
From the perspective of my work, wow, that's a loaded question. I wish I had in advance. Thank you.
Ramadan's gonna get me for that one. So
I may have to chew on that one for a minute. Look, listen, kids, you don't always have to have the question right there. You can.
yes, ma'am.
I'll get back to you.
All right.
The reason for that is, though, because when I think about this profession, it is a collection. When I think about this profession, my thought is, how do I grow a very socially conscious human being who loves themselves and cares about the world around them, and is constantly seeking the voice of others to improve the practice, right? And so when I think about that, I think about those who are leading the charge in social and emotional wellness as well. That's why when your question came, I was like, ooh, there's some folks that are doing really good stuff around growing the social emotional self. And there are folks that are doing excellent stuff in the field of equity. And what would I recommend? I would recommend sending you a list of books that I've read that kind of speak to them both.
Ms. Burgos, I have a final question because our students are listening, and I know some of them understand some of the words we're using and some of them don't. So could you please let our students, community, parents, everyone know, how would you define the word equity?
Equity. Equity is the ability to allow space for all human experiences to be at the table. Equity is removing barriers, systemic barriers that have been in place that have historically stopped all voices from being at the table. Equity is understanding what those processes are, how those policies look, and how our own culture is currently to create space and to remove those barriers out of the way. Equity means that there is representation from everyone so that you have equal access to become, and that the outcome is also equitable too. For example, if we're sitting around a table and we're thinking about creating a new project where we want to address it in the community, one of the things you would use is an equity impact tool. An equity impact tool allows you to think, wow, I've got this project that I want to do to address this situation. And what the equity impact tool, it will pinpoint, if in doing this, who will it address and who will it, in many cases, leave out. So by using equity tools, it allows you to go through those processes and then say, who do we additionally need to bring in as experts or advocates to ensure that what our intent is matches with our outcome. So when you think about equity, the intent and outcome are aligned.
So thank you for that. Making space, providing resources, removing barriers so every person is represented and has a voice so they can be their best selves. And I think
Bring it as a resource. What organizations fail to think is that this is a win-win for you as an organization. The level of creation and processes that this brings to a company is exponential. To be a leader is to be equity focused. It is a leadership skill.
All right. So thank you so much for bringing us so much information this morning, for motivating and inspiring our students and staff, and for doing the work that you do. I'm so thankful for you and the work that you've done in our school division and the work that you're doing with Prince William County division as well. So thank you, Ms. Burgos. Do you have any parting words before we end? We have about 2 minutes.
I want to thank you all for allowing me to be a member of your community this morning. I look forward to hearing from you. I shared my email with is it Bark help me out, Mrs. Barkalow, and I especially put in there to share it with students. I love hearing how students are doing in the community, and any way that I can advocate for your voice, please know that this email is being sent to you in heart. Thank you.
So thank you again. Thank you, Ms. Burgos, for joining us. And we're going to close out our Women's History Spotlight. This month, we focused our interest and energy on women and the contributions that women have made to our local community, and we know the national community as well. So thank you again, Ms. Burgos. And who's going to give us our word for today? Did we pick someone before I jumped on this morning? It is Wednesday. Dr. Alexander, I'll give you a shot.
Oh, Miss Sarah Joy, you want to help me out, or you want me to do it? It is a wonderful Women's Wednesday.
Wonderful Women's Wednesday. Great job, Dr. Alexander. And Miss Renee, would you like to close off the show?
We are growing to excellence, every student, every day, and we're doing it better together.
Have a great day, everyone.
There's a lot of lag. We're going to have to wait.